So warm welcome to all of you gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. Now, we've heard Mr. Rao talk about the now and what lies ahead. But before I begin this discussion on business intelligence, my first question is to try and understand how BI has helped finance departments at the time of a pandemic over the last 2 years. When your revenues were hit, bottom lines were under pressure, how did BI help the finance department? So, Aneel, I'd like to ask you this question first. What has your experience been like?
Thank you, Nisha, for having me for this discussion. I think we all know during pandemic and more especially in the wave one, how the scenario was. During lockdown, everything was closed. I think it was a very unprecedented scenario where probably most of us had not thought of that, we could face that situation. Like, Raghavji talked about, uncertainties in the business. I think this was one of the very great example where people had not visualized a scenario which we had to, deal with. I think in that scenario, when even not just country, even the global businesses were closed because of lockdown, which was caused by pandemic, really people were hunting for any ways of getting some kind of revenue. And that's where probably we needed to use what we had tools with us to, depend on them and try and analyze which are the areas one can try and find some top line and get some revenues using the intelligence. And like if you get into a situation and try and look at it, businesses were initially struggling to sustain their operations. So that's why the first thing was that if people have to operate from home, how do they operate? Did they have enough equipment, enough bandwidth available with them? And did all people who needed to work remotely had the IT equipments available which are secure enough to connect them to this, their main systems? So I think first of the thing in this was that enabling people by way of supplying IT equipments, which would help companies, logistic companies like us to have some revenue. If you move ahead a little bit from there, try and look at that if you have a pandemic, and that's where a lot of demand will be there on medical services. The pharma and the pharma equipment, testing kits, PPE kits, etc. These are the new things which probably initially were not available in India, had to be imported from outside. While we were a domestic company, we needed, permissions to fly abroad because these things were not available. So we worked with the government, especially Ministry of Civil Aviation, to secure permission for us to fly our aircrafts and get those items, PPE kits, sanitizers, etc., so that Indian health, our own health system can work and fight with the pandemic. So that was a new thing, basis the current situation we had to get into. Apart from that, within Indian environment, the companies which were producing this product, obviously they had to, work 24/7 to produce more because demand was quite high. So we worked shoulder in with them to make sure that the moment production is done, these are supplied so that people, those who are suffering or those who need it, are able to get it immediately. So if you look at in an adverse situation where there was in a traditional way, there was no revenue possible. This was the basis, the intelligence available. One is able to drive, and get newer avenues opened up, and then you can, get, some business. Having said that, if one is to look at it, going little behind the scene, that when everything is closed, how do you make sure that when you are trying to provide this service, who is going to provide that service? Obviously the people, because logistics is a people-centric company. So you needed to have people and, to deliver those services and on a timely manner. And that's where probably, HR dashboard ensures that you have motivated people who are helping you to generate the revenue in such tough situations. So all this combined together, where business intelligence plays a big role in ensuring that during adverse situation, you are still running and supporting not only just your top line, but also the entire community, so that, we are able to fight, pandemic. Hope that gives you clarity on that.
Yes. Kapil, would you like to come in here and tell us your experience and how BI helped in the times of a pandemic? Because, 90% of the data that we're all dealing with today has been generated in the last 2.5 years. So you have a lot of data to gather, to function with, to work with. How did that how did BI help you during the tough times of the time? Kapil, the question is for you.
Yeah. So thank you, Anisha, for the brief introduction. And Anil already gave a good insight on how the BI has helped. He has given a valuable inputs about his industry and how they have dealt with it. But the fact is that the current scenario with hybrid working is the new normal. And digital tools have become indispensable infrastructure across industries. In fact, the BI has enabled digital transformation to ensure business continuity in these pandemic times. To put it simply, what is BI? It's about converting data into an understanding of what it holds for better decision making with the help of visualizations, reporting, predictive analytics. So basically, there are three key strategies that the company often use to regain the market shares once it has been lost. They can be like pricing change, or promotional change, or the product change. A very good example of BI can be seen in our day-to-day use is in like Uber and Ola, which we use, because they use BI to determine multiple core aspects of the business. For example, search pricing, wherein algorithm monitor traffic conditions, journey times, driver availability to determine the price, dynamic price in real-time action, which boosts their top line and the bottom line. So BI basically it extracts the important insights from vast unstructured data and transforms them into a valuable decision making for a business information. So company can use this information for decision making, optimize operational efficiency, and enhance productivity.
Okay, so BI did come to the rescue during the time of a pandemic, and now looking ahead, yes. Perhaps we'll use more of this data presented in a very intelligible way by BI that can be used by business leaders. Ravinder, I'd like to come to you. The topic of our discussion is we've spoken about survivorship, about enduring the pandemic, but now we're looking at growth. So we want to understand, does BI actually help you improve your revenues? Can it actually power growth? What is your experience, or what is your opinion on this?
Thanks, Anisha. I think wonderful to be in this forum. I'm not sure if you can hear me okay. Give a thumbs up.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you. So, wonderful to hear Rag and my panelists, Kapil, Shreyas, Aneel, Nikhil. And I think I want to just play it very simple about how do we look at revenues, not just as a growth model, but also how do we look at the leakages or building a filters around how do we keep our revenues moving up, right? Organic, I would say. So in that case, in this sense, I always try to look at as a 3P model approach, right? It's like a past, data, present, and predictive. One of the things that BI, when we talk about business intelligence and the tools related to it, the baseline that comes out are the systems, right? The legacy systems when I talk about past data, without which we don't have anything to move forward, right? So one of the things that we have used is leveraging the legacy systems. Now, it's very different because the technology keeps changing. Some of these legacies have grown outdated, but they still have the data points that we can leverage to move our revenues forward, or at least analyze the leakages, right? So
Ravinder, can you give us examples here? Which are your IT functions you find are legacy and don't serve your purpose, but still have data, and how do you leverage it then?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we did is create a model, right? When we looked at we in fact did a pilot for one of our businesses, and we have done an application in mobile app. It's an iOS and Android app. One of the things that we looked at is a forecasting tool, or when our end product in use comes to our factories. How often do we, or how much inventory or be it consumables or spare parts needs to be kept to be enabled to do an overhaul, for example, right? So in that case, we just, we thought, okay, how can we make it just in time for our inventories, right? That's the mantra for probably every CFO and finance organizations, and keep the working capital running, right? So, one of the things that we observed over the period of last 10 years, and when I talk about past, present data, the amount of time it took us to even proactively work on getting the products or the end products into our factories was completely different. We could have waited for that product to come and do an overhaul and put the spares into it, right? So when we did a complete trend analysis, not just for Rolls, but also the market analysis and competitors also, we improved our cycle time to ensure, just to make sure, oh, this is not the right time to get the overhaul piece to be done, right? We can wait for X number of hours or flying hours for that matter, right? So it gave the complete trend analysis, right, for us to ensure we don't spend on our inventories, and we keep billing our customers for flying hours, right? So it actually saved us 20% of the time and increased our revenue for that. So there's a massive revenue savings, or in fact, continue to increase our revenue models into that side. So last but not the least, I would say being predictive is going to be very critical, because we're going to use the past and present data to define how do we predict the future.
Right. So Ravinder has shown us how, planning right helps them save on cost and, if not boost revenues, but actually strengthen the revenues by plugging the holes. Shreyas, would you also like to give us an example on or your view on whether you think BI can help in revenue generation? Because I really don't know how much of just-in-time inventory and just-in-time is going to help now, because we had a really nasty shock with the supply chain shocks, and those shocks aren't really gone. So just-in-time, I don't know how much we are going to be able to do it, but what areas did you think BI can help when it comes to creation of revenues or plugging the holes? What's your experience been like?
Right. Thank you, Anisha, and thanks, Ravinder. You have covered more or less all that you would want to speak about revenue itself. Maybe I'll focus on what is below the revenue, the costs, because we always say, right, a penny saved is a penny earned. And we have also found out with BI especially, we have found out a lot of expenses that we do. Where exactly does it go? Which regions, which employees spend more? What kind of expenses are these? So these are analytics that give you a lot of insight on what are your expense profiles, where can you cut them down, where you would want to control it, especially in the last 2.5 or 2 years where revenues dropped. And it was very critical for the organization to survive that we focused on the costs as well equally. While, of course, revenue there is no alternative to revenue. Once it's zero, there is no cost to control. So there is only one way out of it. But I think when we are in trouble, we always look to be a little more conservative on our expenses. And that's also where I feel that BI can support us a lot in, of course, a lot of structured data. We have a lot of data. We have always had a lot of data. And I think thanks to this platform, I also did some reading up. So you discover that the term business intelligence itself is from 19th century when IBM started using it. And then you don't know that. So it's just gotten better, and the volume of data available is so much more larger. But I find one pitfall here is that we are these days focusing a lot on the tools of business intelligence rather than the concept of business intelligence, which the colleagues already covered. And I think one important aspect of using BI is also on the expense base. On any expense, it could be the cost of material itself, it could be the sales expenses, it could be travel expenses, etc., where you can analyze it in a lot more detail and take focused steps to reduce it, which will not be detrimental to the company. Because some costs, if you cut it down, the revenue might also get impacted, which you should not allow to happen. So there is a lot more to BI than we can assume, even from a revenue perspective.
All right, a lot more than just revenues. And in fact, just you mentioned it, but we have a panel discussion coming up, which is going to be talking about using digital tools for expense management and maintaining our liquidity, as well as keeping our HR motivated to work harder. We've understood that BI has a lot of applications. It can be used to plug the loopholes, to manage your expenses better. Nikhil, we heard Ravinder say that it helps in predictive analytics. What's been your experience? Can BI help in planning, forecasting, as well as business strategy? At a time, we live in a VUCA world. Mr. Rao mentioned, we don't know what's coming next. COVID has shown us you don't know what to expect. So does BI really help you plan and forecast?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Hope I am audible.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So, future is always difficult to predict. And we have always tried to be as closer to our forecast, improve forecast accuracy. So I will just take you, in the evolution of BI tools. While business intelligence always existed, it existed in early, maybe 20, 25, 30 years also. Because when businesses were generated, everyone thinks forward and plans for future. What is where I want to be in 5 years, where I want to be in 1 year, where I want to be in 10 years. But that time businesses were small, less complex, probably one line of business. But gradually in last 20 years, the pace of business has tremendously increased. And in last 2 years, in fact, with pandemic, that change has probably fastened far more. Now, what has happened is earlier, what plan you would make for 5 years, that gradually dropped to 1 year. And as some of the panelists were talking about in last 2 years, the planning cycles have even shrunk to a quarter or a month. Now, all the tools, what they give you data, but at the end of the day, you have to translate them to get into meaningful insights. So when we do planning, there is always a rear view mirror. So you have a lot of data, either from your CRMs, from your ERPs, from your secondary sales, primary sales, geographical distribution, brand-wise distribution. But at the end of the day, that's the rear view, right? You operate in a competitive world where environment is also changing. So when you are doing a planning, all these tools, the way they help is they have made accumulation of data, collection of data fairly simple. But what is more important is we have to select what kind of data we want to look at on a periodical basis, which gives us a better insight and understanding of our business, because these insights only help us in predicting the future and do the planning. And obviously all these plans get embedded into this business intelligence tool. And when you actually do a business, what also helps is you can monitor the progress, because it gives you a measuring stick against which you can monitor your progress. You can decipher what went right, what went wrong, and keep improving your plans. So tools definitely have helped immensely in getting a right insight, looking at rear view mirror. There are a lot of tools available which gives you external information today, which is extremely important when you plan for forward. And as these plans can be held together in business intelligence tools, it also helps you to monitor the progress against it. So I believe those are the broad foundation stones of these BI tools and how they are helping the businesses.
All right. Anilji, could you give us a few everyday examples of how you have used BI for improvement in daily operations or better efficiencies in daily operations? There could be payments, there could be cash receivables, there could be expenses. Any examples that you can give us?
Sure. So basically, when we talk about BI, it actually provides insights on various aspects of business. And especially when referred to the financial field, I think all of us as a CFOs have a KPIs to deliver. So if one is able to configure KPIs into BI tool, one would get insight on an almost daily basis, if not daily. And some of them could be daily. Like if especially referring to cash flow part or working capital management, which includes payments and also receivables from customers. So if one is to look at first, let's focusing on the receivable part. So receivable tells you that how is organization efficient in collecting monies from the revenues which company has built. So here focus could be on the number of days sales outstanding, which is called DSOs. So DSO improvement can be one of the KPI wherein one needs to continuously monitor payment behavior of customers, or some corrective actions are required where if somebody is faltering on DSOs, because daily projection basis, one would be able to see that what DSOs you are heading for or what target you have taken for DSOs. So generally, if you have a monthly billing cycle, you would have, you can safely assume the 30-day DSO. If it is going beyond, obviously basis the daily collection pattern, one would be able to predict that whether you are heading for the targeted KPIs or you need to course correction and collect monies or put pressure on the recovery teams to follow up faster so that recoveries are done in timely manner and you are able to achieve your DSOs. Similarly, on the DPO side, when vendor payments are concerned, basis the payment history or the basis the supplies made by vendors, what is DPO likely to be, what kind of credit history you had, and what kind of going forward credit period you're signing off, that could help. It's on coming to, especially on if you are fully, nowadays most of the businesses are automated, so one would be able to have visibility on almost daily kind of a projected revenues or profitabilities or projected expenses. So that trend also helps in terms of monitoring the way business is moving, and if any corrective actions are required, that can be looked at it. Like we do not only financial KPIs monitoring, but also non-financial monitoring. Like on operational side, we almost review every day our service levels to customers, that what level we are in, and if somewhere we are not able to achieve, what is the reason for that. That's BI is able to tell us the real pinpoint which location probably has a problem in terms of either network not reaching on time or some localized issues because of which they have not been able to provide the service levels which are expected, and then accordingly corrective actions can be initiated. Similarly, this could be extended even for the customer experience point of view. On a real-time basis, one can take customer experience, how they are liking your services. Like I'm sure many of the industries have already implemented when service is completed, they ask feedback immediately. So similarly, we also have enabled a kind of a system whereby once service is completed or shipment is delivered, customer can rate in terms of his experience, whether it was as per his liking or he wants us to improve, so that basis that interactive feedback which you get, you can do course correction. So I think these are the things which probably has been made possible with the business digitalization and business intelligence tools, which can help in taking action faster.
Right. Kapil ji, could you give us any examples, like how Aneel has said that you monitor continuously because of BI, DPOs, DSOs, and then you plug the holes to make it better. Could you give us an example on how BI helped you identify something missing and how you then fixed it? Kapil, for some reason we can't hear you. Could you unmute yourself? We are unable to hear you.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we are. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we can
hear
you.
Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello? Am I audible now?
So we can hear you.
Yeah. So one way to achieve operational efficiency is that we bundle the similar activities together. So bundling is also seen a very efficient approach that leads to increases the lead and decreases the cost of the businesses. Basically, finance department, they can consolidate financial data. We monitor the cash flows, margins, expenses, revenue stream, all in the real time with the help of business intelligence. So we generally keep a sharp eye on the profitability and see the decision making so that it improves the bottom line. As we are in the power sector, we sell the power on IEX, that is on the exchange. So we used to work out the variable cost and the fixed cost of the power on day-to-day basis. And the bidding happens on the exchange on T-1 day. So for the power to be sold next day, we have to bid in a day in advance. So it's like a stock exchange only. Like in stock exchange, you buy the shares or sell the shares. So we keep our power prices worked out and we go for the bidding. So it's a constant bidding while discoms were buying power on everyday basis. And like Shreyas earlier told, that for him that a rupee saved is a rupee earned, but we follow a more liberal rule. A rupee saved is rupee 20 earned, because if our net profit is 5 rupees, 5% of the total, so if we save 1 rupee, then we are earning 20 times that. So we more, basically our focus is to save more because it gives multiple increase in your revenue. So your PAT margin or the net profit margin increases by many fold. So basically, this is a business intelligence we use to describe, collect, process, and analyze all the data. Means all the operational data are converted into financial data in real time to make a business decisions for the growth of the business or do some in-house software we have developed, which helps us in bidding on a real-time basis. So that is how we used BI for efficiency in our daily operations.
All right. Shreyas, you also wanted to come in here and say something. Please go ahead.
So I think that's all from my side.
Yes, Kapilji, please hold on. Shreyas, for some reason,
hello, I'm unable to hear you.
Okay, I guess you can hear me now.
Yeah,
so
we can
yeah,
hear you,
I think
Shreyas.
Anil mentioned an important point that I just wanted to reiterate on is operational information, operational data. So as a finance professional, a lot of times we are so focused on financial information that we tend to ignore a lot of operational data that's available and then structure it for inputs. For example, the service trends, your contract ratio, your if you have, let's say, capital equipment which are under service, how much of AMCs do you have, or how is your how is your sales team doing in the field? These are all activities that are these days monitored, and these can also be used to forecast. These can also be used to create more inventory or less inventory, and so on. So a lot of operational data today is getting very well used in the finance world, and this is an important point I felt that we need to reiterate here to everybody, so that this is a point we don't miss on.
All right. Not to miss this at all. Ravinder, would you like to perhaps give us an example or tell us if you feel that BI helps in risk modeling at all? Because those in finance have a lot of things, a lot of balls in the air. Managing risk is an important bit. Does BI help there at all?
I think I'll answer in a different way. Today we have so much of a huge data sitting in the systems, right? In itself, it becomes a risk, right? How much are we exposing ourselves, right? And today I see there are two extreme schools of thoughts. One school is working on a traditional models of data and systems, and then one is highly tech savvy organizations, people, and so on, right? So I'll start by saying that today there is so much of data. The data privacy it itself becomes an issue today. Now, how do we leverage that, right? So how do we mitigate the data that we sit on first? That's the first point. Now, there's no dearth of information that we have now. This could be our external laws, internal policies, internal regulations or controls network or framework, whatever you can say, right? So the whole framework that we have can be leveraged through the BI platforms, be it your standard ERP governance platforms, right? Today, there's a whole portfolio of services that most of the ERPs give. I don't want to name any of that, but all of them have those risk analysis done, or the dashboards that comes out is very useful for the directors of the company, just as a board sitting in, right? So there's a complete set of data point that's available. Now my question is, my thought is about how do we leverage the best part, because the data is so much today. We sit on any subsidiary or an Indian entity has close to 500, 600 standard laws applicable to them, right? Externally. I mean, I'm just talking in a very lower mode, high risk, top tier laws, right? But if you take, there could be thousands of laws, right? But on a standard model, right? So how much do we explore that? How do we build a tier platforms of that as a risk model? Should we look at a top tier laws, compliances, and risk modeling, right? So there could be external risks, internal risks, right? Geopolitical, economic, and so on and so forth. Exchange today, we heard Raghav talking about cross-border risks and so on, right? So there is so much that we have. My only submission for this question would be is, how do we leverage in the right sense to start with and enable the stakeholders that we work with externally? For example, the sales teams, the purchasing teams, who expose themselves into a large gamut of laws, which they don't even know probably, right? So that's the leverage, I would say, giving them their share of thoughts, our share of thoughts to them, and use that into their platforms that they go on. Yeah.
All right. Nikhil, Ravinder has mentioned, the deluge of data and how to, contour or use that data to be of use to your stakeholders. And of course, risk modeling is one of the areas to use them. What's your experience like? And how much of the BI that you use is automated? How much of manual intervention is required from your end?
Yeah, so this very interesting question, because most of the tools which we use, and being all CFOs and analysts normally end up doing a lot of work in Excel. So definitely, what happens is all your standard dashboards, which are predetermined, well designed in the BI tools, which is like a cockpit. You monitor the health of your business by monitoring that cockpit, regularly looking at the all parameters, whether they are right or not. But there will always be a need that business is dynamic, world is dynamic, and there will be a need to change those dashboards. There will be a need to change or capture additional information in the BI tools. So it takes time. So in the interim, you need to massage the data in manually in Excel to derive some of the insights which are important for business. But by and large, I would say, if I look at 10 years back or probably 15 years back, all that work used to happen mostly manually. Now 90% of the work can get done through BI, but there will still be 10%, 15%, depending upon how dynamic is your business, how fast growing is your business. You will always need to have some intelligence, which will require manual intervention.
All right. We're coming towards the close of this discussion, and I want to ask each one of you on how you see the role of CFOs evolving in the months and the years ahead, because there's so many balls in the air. The core finance, compliance, digital transformation, so many things have to be managed by CFOs. So how do you see the role of CFOs in the years ahead? Shreyas, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I think not only CFOs, I think every finance professional's role has transformed in the last 2 years. The availability of data and the availability of tools to crunch this data, and then further other business information technology tools that give us dashboards and analytics have simplified this part of the job. But like Nikhil just mentioned, there's still a lot of manual work, a lot of calls that still need to be made based on this. For example, nobody expected a pandemic like this, and no tool would have forecasted this. So this still needs calls to be taken on the feet when things are happening. But however, I think we should not shy away from new tools. One is upgrade ourselves all the time, see what is new and available, and also ensure we leverage every bit of information that is relevant to us, because there is a lot of GIGO, garbage in, garbage out going on. So first is to pick what is relevant, filter it out, and then use it in a lot of tools are available. So pick the right one for your organization and ensure that these are automated to whatever extent possible, and reduce efforts around them, and see where people can add value rather than doing mundane tasks which are just repetitive and add no value to anybody.
Right. Ravinder, would you like to go next? How can CFOs be value creators and justify their place on the board?
Yeah, one of the things I read in a study long back is, in next 10 to 15 years, almost 30% of the current roles will just get redundant. But at the same time, the bright side is 25% of the new roles, across the functions, across the businesses would be created. Now, what every day I see myself is, how do I stop myself being redundant, getting redundant in next few years, right, for the next decade? And I'm sure most of the CFOs, or for that matter, any functional leads, independent freelance or gigs would think about it, right? So I would say that's key. Now, how do we create a value is, today, BI, like I said, there are two schools always, right? Now, there is so much of data. I always get a new set of report almost every month, right? So the question lies is, the data can be realistic, the data can be great to use, and it can create a value, and it can help you, sit in a boardroom and decide the new business cases. But data can be messy, and it can be chaotic. So I always link it to chaos is always costly. So I'll finish up by saying, let's find an order with the integrating the data and finance analytics to create value, and keep learning through it, right? That's going to be key for all of us here. I'm not an exception on that. Thank you.
All right. Nikhil, how do you see the role of CFOs evolving in the years from now? Because, while data, technology, all of these are avoiding redundancies, all very important. But, you also need to get your ear on the ground, right? You need to have empathy. And COVID has taught us that. Without empathy, you're nowhere. So where do you see the role of CFOs from here on?
Yeah, I guess already in last 10, 15 years or so, the role of CFO has transformed tremendously from being just an accountant who would finalize the financial statements of the company, get the audits done. From there, the journey has come to a business leader who is considered to be the co-pilot of the pilot. So if CEO is a pilot, CFO today is considered to be a co-pilot. And there is a reason for that. CFOs are uniquely positioned in the organization where they are at a focal point. They have a 360-degree view of the business, what's happening in sales, marketing, manufacturing, supply chain, logistics. So they have this unique position. And because of that, a lot of responsibility is being put on their shoulder more and more. So today, if I have to say, being a controllership role, custodian of the assets of the company role, now that is given. I mean, you have to perform that role. But what is gaining more and more importance is, how do you add value to the business? How do you steward the business through difficulties and challenges? And most importantly, as a leader, how do you, in the difficult times, how do you balance between empathy, aggression, and performance? No easy answer to it, but I think that's what leaders are expected to do.
It only gets tougher as you go ahead. I'm saying, how do you see the role of CFOs in the years ahead?
So Aditi, I would put it slightly differently. I would say this, highly, people are seeing this role as a very different way. They are putting lots and lot of responsibility. Probably they feel very high confidence in the CFOs. And that because of that confidence, the role has been only increasing and not reducing any which way. If you see earlier, as Nikhil mentioned about role, how it has evolved over a period of time, and it's still evolving. Now there's hardly any line between CIO and CFO when you are talking about digital strategy to be run by the organization. So the line is very thin. And I'm sure going forward, as things are evolving, like we talk about environment, ESG, etc. CSR has already come in. Now people are talking about ESG also coming in. So I'm sure all that will also be added to one of the additional responsibility for CFO. So I think it is more and more confidence on the CFO, which is why people are looking at more and more responsibility to be discharged by CFOs. And that will only keep increasing because generally it happens when you trust a person, you will give job only to that person, so that you are confident that this person will do justice to that. So I see that moving ahead, all newer thing coming on the CFO's table and getting executed and he being made accountable will only continue. That over to you. Thanks.
Right. Kapil, I'll give it the last word. What would you like to say? You're on mute, Kapilji.
Sorry, already Shreyas, Ravinder, Nikhil, and Aneel has added much. But just to sum up, I'll say that CFO is someone who can be an adept influencer, a strong communicator, and a tireless change agent. Basically, finance is the lifeblood of business, and the CFO has to choose to orient themselves as a responder, as a challenger, as an architect, and as a transformer. Basically, who transforms the entire business, who architects the entire business, and responds to all the needs of the business. So it's basically who drives the CEO also in the decision making in all the aspects of the business, as pointed out by Nikhil, that he knows the 360-degree angle of the business. So all the aspects of the business. So that way the role of the CFO is much more important, since he have a comprehensive view of the business and he can take a decision. He is well equipped to take a decision how it should move ahead.
All right.
Anisha, I'll add one liner. I think CFO will have to keep many hats in his office. So depending on which situation he is in, he'll have to keep changing those hats.
Okay, that's inside trick for all CFOs who are tuned in. Thank you all for joining us and sharing with us your views, your perspectives, and your wisdom on business intelligence and how it's evolving, how it's helping CFOs in their day-to-day jobs, in building a strategy for the company, in growing their company. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Kapilji, Nikhil, Aneelji, Ravinder, Shreyas. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon and sharing your thoughts with us.